So my name is Dune Lankard. My EAC name is Jamutsiki, and Jamutsiki means little bird that screams really loud and won't shut up. And I received my name right after the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened in my backyard. And I realized at that point that to me it was the day the water died, but something inside of me came to life. And I looked at my land and the ocean differently because the ocean had always given to my family and taken really good care of us. And so I felt it was my turn to give back to the ocean. And so I basically walked away from commercial fishing that I'd done since I was 5 years old and decided to spend the remainder of my life trying to figure out how to help heal the ocean, help restore our fisheries, and protect as much habitat as I possibly could. We live in a small town that was once called EAC after my people. They changed the name to Cordova in about 1908. And the Cordovans built the foundations of the city right on top of our EAC people. And they could have easily erased us from living memory had the EAC elders not stepped up like they did, like my mother. My mother was a fighter for everything EAC. She organized our people. She pushed for our land claims. She wanted to protect our traditional subsistence and fishing way of life. We were the final village selected to receive land claims 2.5 years after the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act passed into law. And so I grew up in a household of a lot of politics. My mother was fighting for Native rights, and my father was fighting for fishing rights for the local fishing community. And so when I think about how I grew up in this fishing family, to us, it was all about subsistence. And I remember when we would be fishing, whether it was commercially or out harvesting products that were not products, but species out in the wild, we'd always come back with more. And my father and mother, after they would process whether it was seafoods or ducks or goat or deer or whatever it is, halibut, cod, shrimp, they'd package it, and then we'd go do drops in the community. We'd do like 15 to 20 drops. And one day I asked my father, I said, why do we do this? And he said, well, because we can, and we're always going to have more, and the community will always need it. And they don't have the time to take off their work to go fishing, to buy a boat, to get a net, to pay for the fuel, learn where to go, how to fish. And so it's just easier for us, since we're already out here doing this, to bring extra home and help feed our community. And I realized as I got older that subsistence is actually an act of philanthropy, because when, like, I give a fish to you and you're able to feed yourself and your family and your friends, and you don't have to buy that fish in the store, because like if it's a Copper River salmon here in America, that sockeye salmon costs $49.99 a pound. For our Copper River King salmon, which is the big fish, that goes for $89.99 a pound. So who can afford that, right? And so if you help feed your family and friends, then subsistence is actually an act of philanthropy. And so this is the way that I grew up. I was taught to preserve the food properly. I was taught to catch it properly, handle it properly, process it properly. So I've spent my life, my education has been the Copper River Delta and Prince William Sound. I got C's and D's and F's in high school because I didn't believe any of the things they were teaching us. And I knew that I was always going to live from the land and the sea. And so I just felt like, that's where I needed to stay focused on. And so when the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened in my backyard, I realized that I had to stand up and represent and be louder than everything else, yet remain a voice of reason so people would listen. And so I spent 30 years of my life doing land back campaigns and saved about 1 million acres of old growth wild salmon habitat in the Exxon spill zone. And years later, I met a wonderful professor, Dr. Elizabeth Hoover, and she wrote this article about food. And the article was entitled, "How Can You Call Yourself Sovereign If You Can't Feed Yourself?" Well, so to me, that was like, isn't that the ultimate question? How are we going to survive in the future, let alone be sovereign, if we can't feed our people? So I realized that saving habitat wasn't enough, that we had to figure out how to grow things from the land and the sea, as well as procure our traditional subsistence way of life. And since we're already out there growing sea vegetables and kelp and mariculture is like bivalves, which is mussels, scallops, oysters, clams. Those are resources that we've harvested traditionally. So what I told our Native Conservancy team that we formed in 2002 to do the land conservation work, I basically said, okay, saving the land isn't enough. We have to figure out how to grow things from the land and the sea. So while we're out there doing our kelp farming, throw your hooks in the water, do your kelp work, and then go up into the mountain and harvest a deer or some foods, bring it all back home, and we'll process it, we'll freeze it properly, we'll package it, and we'll deliver it to our community members who are in need. Because during the time of COVID, a lot of people weren't getting their traditional foods. And so we were afraid that, they needed that food because there's nothing like it, right? And so we just felt that food security and food sovereignty went hand in hand with our Ocean Back campaign to get ocean farming in the water for Indigenous peoples. When we started the Native Conservancy, the biggest problem that we had with land trusts and conservation deals is there weren't cultural easements or conservation principles that valued our intrinsic values. And those are, clean water, clean air, wild salmon, native people harvesting that wild salmon. If you look at the history in Alaska's body of law, all those laws and policies have successfully stripped the food away from the people who have traditionally lived in these different places for thousands of years. And so by rebalancing native diets with subsistence foods in our community, let alone in Alaska, what that does is it teaches people how to live on the water again. It changes their relationship with their food source. So they know how to harvest it. They know how to process it. They know how to handle it differently to feed their people. Because when the state of Alaska turned our fishing way of life into a limited entry permit program, you took our fishing way of life and turned it into a commodity that was for sale. So people in the time of hardship sold those fishing rights. And therefore, if you have children in your family and they're not able to get the permit or get a boat and learn how to fish on the sea, that's easily lost. And within one generation, you can lose an entire culture and fishing culture. And so, we decided that we needed to look at holistic approaches and solutions that actually taught people things that they never remembered, right? And what I mean by that is is when you get out on the sea and you get on a boat, you start remembering things that you never knew. The same with like, rafting down the Copper River and being out in the wild for 10 days. You start remembering things that you didn't know because it's a matter of survival. The land speaks to you, the water speaks to you, the salmon speak to you. If you don't figure that out, then you perish and you wonder why. And so to me, this was about, building a boat company, getting boats in the hands of the people again, teaching them how to subsistence harvest and fish, teach them how to preserve their foods in natural ways. Like Native people have historically frozen the fish because they had permafrost. They had coolers and freezers. They dehydrated the fish. They dried them on lines in the sun and the wind. They smoked them. They pickled them. They fermented them. I don't like fermenting, but I grew up with it. So we have a lot of different ways that we preserve food to last a long time, and especially so you can eat it in the off season when that resource isn't there. And I remember my grandmother, Ataki, which means strong as an ant in Eyak. Ataki would teach me about the seasons of animals. And she would teach me that, this is what resources are going to be coming in, at this particular time, and you're going to have to be ready. You're going to have the right equipment. You're going to have to know how to handle it. And I realized that this was all about, carrying on a tradition and culture that we have historically grown up with. And so our program is really about reconnecting people to the land and the sea and to their food sources. And I have this way of looking at it that people look at business differently. Like a lot of people want to scale up and get bigger and, bigger, faster, better, more. Okay, we want to scale up by scaling down. And what we mean by that is scaling down local processing that's owned by the people in the community. So when all the big processors and the canneries and the factories, they all run out of resource, they're all going to leave town. But the community is still going to have to know how to process their food. So we decided to build community cold storages because we harvest 16 different resources for our Native people. And so when you add up all the species, I mean, it could be everything from halibut to cod to shrimp to crab species to venison, seagull eggs. The list goes on. It's like 16 now. And we're actually thinking bigger now because when the typhoon Merbok hit last year in September, the whole western half of the state, and here's the state of Alaska and the Aleutian chain, this whole part of the state got hit really hard by this typhoon. Well, they had to deal with 50-foot waves. And so they had to move to higher ground. There was issues with permafrost, with the freezing, with electricity. They were in desperate need of food. And so we're going to consider buying a gillnet permit because, like, if you subsistence harvest, you're only allowed 25 fish a year. But if you have a Area E drift gillnet permit, then you're able to fish the Copper River Delta and Prince William Sound and catch as many fish as you would like. So we could feed a lot of people that way. And one of the thoughts that, I wanted to share on the community cold storage is that, you run into logistic issues really quick because can you handle the capacity? Can you handle the processing? Do you have a place to store it properly? So there are logistics involved. And so in this whole process, it can create a lot of jobs for the people. And to me, it's about creating blue-green jobs that are regenerative and about giving back to the land and the sea and not just taking from it. traditional ecological knowledge, TEK. I tried my best to wrap my mind around that for many years. Uh, and and I realized that it was really about indigenous knowledge. And what that means is that um, it's having the local knowledge, but thousands of years of history of thinking, acting, and living from the land and the sea. And so, why I think that people should be funding indigenous peoples directly is they're the ones who can come up with the solutions based on their history and knowledge of the land and the sea. For example, I can take you out into places in the Copper River Delta and Prince William Sound that you would never even know existed. And when I take you there, I can show you resources. I can catch different species from the land and the sea that until you learn how, you won't know how to do it for yourself. And there's some special places like where we grew up in Prince William Sound and even on the Copper River Delta that I haven't taken people in my life because I don't want them to know that these places exist. Otherwise, they'll go and take all the resources. It's like, when people found out where the butter clam beds were and the steamers, the cockles. When they found out where those beaches were, they went and wiped them all out. I mean, they took everything. They didn't take just their share. They took everything. And so, with ocean acidification, with ocean rise, with ocean warming, indigenous peoples know how to co-manage and manage the resource, based on sustainability, not on maximum production. And so when you look at the developing world and you look at, the people in the commercial fishing industry, it's all about maximum level of harvest. And, to me, it's about maximum level of life, that there should be a way that we can survive without having to, destroy everything in order to survive. And it's a mentality thing. Like my people, the EAC, are matriarchal. We're not patriarchal. So we believe in Mother Earth. We don't want to dominate Mother Earth. And so we have a different philosophy. We have a different belief system. To us, what we're doing now is about fostering indigenous community connections amongst our native peoples across Alaska, who really do need to change their relationship with their food source and change their relationship with the ocean. And so I feel that the things that we're doing is helping not only our villages in the region that are in need, but helping communities across Alaska that are in need. Because some of these communities are witnessing 85% unemployment. And so when you think about ocean farming, getting kelp farms in place and mariculture farms, and you start talking to those native people about their indigenous knowledge of the region, of the resources that they've traditionally harvested, what grows where, you'll never be able to get their favorite nagoonberry patch out of them, that's for sure. And they're certainly not going to tell you about where they're going to harvest their black seaweed, but they know enough about the ocean and what can grow where that it de-risks whatever investment that you make by talking to indigenous peoples. And they're going to do it sustainably. They're not going to do it for maximum harvest and yield. They're going to do it for conservation and restoration and mitigation. Well, I think besides coming to visit us and fully immersing yourself in what we're doing, uh, you know, helping direct funding. And I direct energy, and I've always done that. I direct time, money, or love in whatever direction that we need to do to direct it in order to make that change in the world. Because the reality of the situation is, in this time of hardship and less, things are going to get worse, not better. So if we're focused on solutions rather than being a part of the problem, then we're part of a united front that actually is going to probably be the survivors. And because a lot of people just aren't going to make it for whatever reason. But I feel that the people who have that connection to the land and the sea, and they have the connection to how they're going to grow their resources, because you're not going to be able to eat money. But you can eat from the land and the sea as long as you take care of it. And so to me, fishing has always been about a renewable energy. As long as you protect the habitat, the salmon will always come back. They'll always feed you. They'll always create jobs. They'll always take care of you. And I feel no different than for the planet. We're all indigenous to Mother Earth, regardless of who we think we are. We have to quit believing everything we think and change the way we act, and be bold and courageous, and step forward and fund and implement and support solutions that make sense for the long term. They may not make sense right now for your immediate community, but when you think about everything and how it's connected, and you want to be a part of that future, then the only way that that's going to happen is if you act locally while you're thinking globally. Because for me, all I've ever known is the Copper River Delta and Prince William Sound. But I know that if I'm one of the people that are out there living on the land and the sea and helping manage it and co-manage it, then there's a really good chance that we're going to be okay. You know, the resources are going to come back. It's a renewable economy. We need to figure out how to process, how to value add, how to preserve our foods better. We have to figure out how to barter again. The EACs, it wasn't about just money, it was about bartering, exchanging what you have for what other people have that'll enable you to survive in these climate changing times. And I'm scared, I'm worried, and I'm thinking that we're not acting fast enough. And we're bright enough, we have the technology, we have the collective intelligence, but what we lack is the courage and the boldness to actually replace the leaders that are not leaders. There's world people out there that think they're leaders, but they're not, because this is about our survival as a human race, and it's on the brink. And why is that? Because it's all based on money and greed and forecasts. It's not based on reality. And so we each need to step up and decide, where we're going to buy our food and who we're going to support and who we're going to invest in. And everything that I do, like some people, they go, Dune, it appears you're on the uphill rise. And I go, no, I'm actually on the downhill slide. But what I'm doing is I'm providing tools and opportunity for the youth of the future, like you, who will inherit all of the bad decision debt that the world has put in your hands. And you're going to inherit the climate changing times that this economy and these supposed world leaders are leaving you. That is not the option. That is not where it ends. This is where it begins. This is where we have to stand up and fight and be louder than everything else, yet come up with solutions and be that voice of reason to be the change that we want to see in the world. I want to tell you a short story about an article that my sister Pamela found in the Cordova Times. And it was an article from about 1909. And the reporter had seen two Native women get off the ship from the Bering River, which is about 100 miles to the east of Cordova. And there was a controversial coal field called the Bering River Coal Field, COAL, that the Guggenheims and the JP Morgans, they called them the Alaska Syndicate. They wanted to harvest all of that coal to power their locomotives to go 150 miles up the Copper River to Kennecott to take this copper ore out of McCarthy and bring it back to Cordova, which was the terminus for this industry. Well, this battle was played out and fought for about a dozen years and went all the way to the US Supreme Court, where the Guggenheims and JP Morgan lost because they said it would have been a monopoly had they allowed them to steal one common resource, the coal, to power the locomotives to go 150 miles upriver to steal another public resource, the copper ore. And the Guggenheims and JP Morgans at the time owned all the canneries, the railroads, they owned all the seafood companies, they owned all the shipping lanes. They took all of the resources out of Alaska because Alaska has always been a natural resource extraction region. Well, when the reporter caught up to these Native women, he thought that they had a brick of coal underneath their arm. And so he felt there was a story there because this was all over the coal field. The fight was being played out with Teddy Roosevelt, the president, and Gifford Pinchot, first head of the Forest Service. And the writer catches up with the two Native women, and he finds out that it's not a brick of coal underneath their arm, it's a brick of kelp. And the Eyacs were famous for making kelp cakes, where they would take a layer of kelp, a layer of berries, a layer of kelp, some hooligan oil, probably throw some spotted shrimp in there, another layer of kelp, but it would all be dried, and then they would cold press it. So it'd be like about this thick and about 1.5 feet long and probably 8 inches wide. And that brick of kelp was high in nutrients, high in omegas, high in vitamins. Kelp has 14 different vitamins. It has 10 times more calcium than milk. It has iodine. Really, really important high energy, high omega food source. Well, if you're able to go take one of those bricks of kelp with you, then you're going to be able to stay strong and stay sane while you're out there traveling, whether it's on a boat or walking upriver 300 miles or walking across the Delta 300 miles. You're going to want some of this traditional food source. And it was probably America's first energy bar. And again, that's indigenous knowledge that if it's shared and understood and replicated, then we're going to have a better chance of survival and making it into the future. And so I feel like it's important for me to, find some of these recipes and to record some of this history and these traditions and this way of life and share them with the world, with people like you and people who really want to, invest differently in the world, invest in the people on the front line who have that knowledge and history and occupation and tradition and culture and heritage that is really beyond belief, because you'll start remembering things you didn't know as soon as you start looking at the planet differently and certainly acting differently.